Right, well, good. Well, welcome everyone. Very warm welcome to you. Welcome to this edition of Future Work Scotland. We had a bit of a break, so we're very excited to be joining you all again and returning back to our usual format. Yeah, we had a good summer break, so yeah, great to be back. So I'm your host, Sathpal Singh. If you don't know me, everybody calls me Sath, and I'm joined by my co-organizer Donald. If this is your first time with us, very warm welcome to you. If you've been with us before, welcome back. Very simple in terms of our format and code of conduct. We just ask you all to be respectful to one another. We want everyone to have a great time, a great experience, a good learning experience. So yeah, please let's all keep that in mind. As usual, we're pretty relaxed in terms of format here. So after we've started with our topic for this session, if you do have any questions come up for you as we go along, feel free to drop them in the chat. If you can prefix them with a Q, it makes it easier for Donald and I to spot them. And we may take breaks as we go along, so you might get the opportunity to come off mute and share your question verbally as we go. But we'll see how we progress. And of course, we will have a Q&A at the end, so there'll be plenty of time to pick up your questions. And then we'll do any other announcements and shout outs at the end as we always do. And with that, I'm thrilled and delighted to welcome Hazel Anderson-Turner to Future Art Scotland for our August September session. If you don't know Hazel's work, Hazel's a certified business psychologist. She wrote this book that Donald's holding up. I haven't quite got to that yet, but this is why we're all here this evening. And Hazel's also a certified professional coach. She was in learning and organizational design for quite some years before she founded her own consultancy and really focused on resilient leadership, which I think is fantastic topic. As Donald will hold up there, and what really brings us together this evening is Hazel's new book, which I believe came out early this year. I can't remember off the top of my head. And we're really looking forward to learning more about burnout, what it is, what it isn't, busting some myths, I'm sure, and really learning how to prevent it in the first place. So, without further ado, I'll hand over to Hazel. Hazel, welcome to visit Future War Scotland. Thank you. Welcome.
I love it. I feel like we're still kind of in that summer mode, just like winding back up. So I hope, yeah, everyone will forgive me for any moments where I'm kind of slipping back into, yeah, too relaxed state. So it's lovely to be with you tonight or this morning, whatever time zone you're in. So yeah, I'm going to be doing a session today, not kind of solely focused around the book, but it's a session that is adapted from the training that I deliver for our National Health Service to give you, as I said, an insight into burnout, to dispel some myths, and to I think kind of start to think about, okay, what might I be able to do for myself? And so let me pop the slides up. So Seth has already kindly introduced me and said all the official stuff. And I guess what I wanted to start with is, it is my story. And I guess, the book is a combination of my story, the story of the people that I coached, mostly in the National Health Service during COVID, and also the theoretical, the psychology behind it, which I will talk a bit more about later. But the reason that I got into burnout, kind of that area, that topic, was when what was it, about 8 years ago, before I started my own business, I was head of workforce development across three organizations. And this for me was like, oh, this is my dream job. I'm getting to work with, a council, police service, and fire service. And I got this job when I was 6 months pregnant. And I was like, yeah, I'm living the dream. I'm doing it all, walking around with the bump, and kind of thought I was really kind of winning at life. I'd never had a baby before, so I didn't get the impact, particularly the sleep deprivation would have on me. And my husband and I, we shared parental leave. So I went back to work after 10 weeks, back into full-time work. And looking back, I'm pretty proud actually that I lasted 18 months, because I was in a role where, it was because of money saving that they'd combined it into three. So it was three people's role. It was now one person's role. It was my first leadership role. I was leading people who had gone through a massive transition and had to apply for their own jobs. So psychologically, they weren't in a brilliant place. And I was there, just had my first baby and was in that role. And I I hit burnout, had this moment, and if you buy the book, you'll hear about my story. But this moment of just, it hit me. I say quite often that burnout happens really slowly and then really quickly, and that's the experience of a lot of people. For some people, it's just a very slow progression into crisis point. For me, it was very, very fast, and then bam, I was in a toilet crying and not able to get out. And at that point, I felt like such a failure as a leader, as a mother, and as a psychologist. So I was a psychologist specializing in well-being, and I found myself experiencing burnout, and it was incredibly embarrassing. And I ended up having the opportunity to leave the organization. I started my own business, and I went into resilience. And it's really fascinating, isn't it? Because resilience now, I think, understandably gets a really bad rap because people are told you're just not resilient enough. It's all about you. If you go and get some resilience training, or if you're supported to be more resilient, then you'll be able to cope with your work environment. And so when COVID hit, I started doing resilience coaching. And I sat in my little cupboard and I just did session after session after session of resilience coaching. And what I saw were not people who were not resilient. They were people dealing with an absolutely awful context. And they were people that were trying to make sense of it and trying to navigate this really challenging context. And then the NHS came to me and said, you know, we the resilience stuff, it feels like it's less about that. We're seeing this thing called burnout. Could you come and do some work around burnout? And as I started to research more into the area, I think what was incredibly reassuring was that the research is really clear, and we'll talk more about it later, that burnout is absolutely about your context. Yes, there are things that individuals can do to keep themselves well, but it is not that you have failed. So this experience that I had, where I felt like if only I had been stronger, if only I had been more resilient, then I would have been able to survive and thrive in that environment. Actually, it helped me to see that maybe it wasn't just about me, maybe it was about what's going on around me as well. And so the the NHS, not only did they ask me to help raise awareness of burnout, but they asked me to help people to navigate it. And so I took the coaching skills that I had been delivering, um, and I put that into a course, a training course called Coaching Through Burnout, to help people to coach themselves and to coach others through this challenging period. And that's where the book came from. It was kind of saying I was seeing such amazing feedback, doctors, nurses, support staff saying to me, actually, this has really, really helped me. Out of all the things that we've offered, being offered meditation and yoga and all these kind of things, and there are lots of wellness things that absolutely do help. They said what you've given me is a way to help myself through this. You've given me some skills to help me to move through. And we'll talk more about this as we go on, but I just wanted to give you a bit of an idea about how I got to here today. So let's start with what this thing called burnout is, because I know it's one of those words, it's quite a buzzword at the moment. We're talking about burning out quite a lot. So if you can just pop in the chat, what what comes up for you? What words, what symptoms, what are we talking about? When we're talking about burnout, what is it? What are some of the things that describe for you what burnout is? Yeah, so we've got enthusiasm, decrease, emotional exhaustion, no longer force yourself to do things. Yep, tiredness, low mood, etc. Low motivation. Anything else? Apathy. Yeah, so we'll come to, oh, and Jim, work moves from being a joy to a chore. Yes, and we'll talk more about those specifics in a minute. Um, So, burnout is defined by the World Health Organization as a syndrome conceptualized as resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. So, we're talking about stress, and we know that a little bit of stress, some good stress, it can be good for us, particularly those of us that do anything kind of sporting related. We know that a little bit of stress can be helpful. Um, but chronic stress we know is not good for us. So this is stress day after day after day, week after week, month after month, and potentially year after year that has not been resolved. So has not been able to be processed, to be moved through, to be managed. And it's really interesting because I think a lot of the people that I've coached, a lot of people that I've talked to that have experienced burnout, when I say to them it's about workplace stress, they're like, yeah, there obviously is a massive workplace element, but often it's also the interaction between the things that are happening in our own life interacting with what's happening at work at all as well. And so I think it's really interesting. I think obviously a lot of the research has come from the workplace because that's where it's funded. And also, I think the World Health Organization focusing on it being about workplace stress is because it wants organizations to take this seriously. This is not an individual thing. This is a thing about your system. There is something going on. And you as an organization need to be aware of it and to notice it and take action. If you have this symptom of chronic stress running throughout your organization, it is your responsibility to do something about it. And then when we look at and those elements that you identified in the chat, what is this thing called burnout? The research that I'm showing here was conducted by a psychologist called Christina Malash and her team in the late 70s, and it's found to be really enduring. So this idea that burnout is about three things: overwhelming exhaustion, so that's physical, emotional, cognitive, and can be spiritual exhaustion, cynicism and detachment. So this sense that I just don't care anymore. I think somebody said apathy, but this feeling that actually I've been caring and I've been caring and I've been caring, and I don't have any caring left. And then this sense of ineffectiveness. So this bit that I really felt, this kind of sense of failing. I'm just not getting to anything. I feel like I'm letting people down. And you can see how these three can interact with each other. And I think what's really interesting about, as a psychologist, the cynicism and detachment piece is really interesting because we've all worked with people who've kind of got to that point of like, oh God, in the NHS, if we didn't have patients, wouldn't it be wonderful? Or if we didn't have customers, wouldn't it be great? Or, if the organization doesn't care about me, and getting into a real them and us place. And often that is because we're trying to protect ourselves. So there's something about our values have drawn us into the type of work that we're doing. But then because the closeness to it it's, we're not maybe able to live our values in that situation, we start to distance ourselves and move ourselves back to protect ourselves. So I see this cynicism and detachment as a protection thing, not, not just a kind of like, oh, I'm just fed up. It's something much more kind of psychologically and emotionally deeper than that. So this is what we're looking out for. And this five-stage model of burnout is quite useful as well in that sense of thinking about burnout. We've got here, burnout is step 4. So the thing that we often talk about with burnout is crisis point. So for me, that moment when I got stuck in that toilet and was really, really upset, or for someone else, the moment when they just couldn't make themselves go to work that day, or to they're functioning really, really slowed down to the point where it was overwhelming. um but the movement towards burnout, it's not an overnight thing. Sometimes it might feel like that, but it absolutely isn't. So we start in some kind of honeymoon phase in a new job. So we've got, good job satisfaction. We're like, yeah, this is a great job for me. I'm feeling quite creative. I've got good energy. And then we move into this world that most of us inhabit most of the time, which is the balancing act. So we start to, maybe workloads particularly tight. We've just come back from holiday, workload feels a bit higher, we're coming into that, the busier period before Christmas. So I'm starting to see a little bit of stress symptoms. My sleep is starting to be disrupted. Either I'm struggling to get to sleep at night, or I'm finding myself waking at 3 a.m. Maybe I'm starting to neglect my personal needs. So I'm not cooking for myself in the evening. I'm going and getting a takeaway. I'm drinking a bottle of wine as a way to switch off, rather than going to my usual five-a-side match. Um, and and that, the balancing act, what tends to happen, hopefully, is that things quieten down at work. Maybe we were covering for someone else's job for a little while they're on holiday, and then things go back to normal, and we move back and forward. So we notice, oh look, I seem to be getting a little bit stressed. I'm going to make sure that I go to the gym, because I know that really helps me. I'm going to make sure that I'm eating well, and all this kind of stuff. So we kind of move back and forward between the two. The thing to really start to notice is when those stress symptoms move into a chronic place. So when it becomes much more normal that you are struggling to get to sleep, that you are waking in the middle of the night, that you regularly feel exhausted, that you are in this place where you are just trying to get to the end of the day, just trying to get to the end of the week, just trying to make it until your next holiday. And when I'm working with clients, we're looking at how long has this been going on for? So if we're talking about, 3, 6, 9, 12 months, then this is absolutely going to be having an impact on your physical health, on your mental health. And what we don't want to be reaching is that crisis point. So this is where you've really crowded out the activities that help you. You have stopped meeting up with friends. You're kind of like, all you're trying to do is just to keep the wheels on the bus. Your mind is not being helpful to you, and which is not helped by the sleep disruption. You might find that you get caught in obsessions about work, and feel like totally overwhelmed by them and unable to move through them. So this is the point that we're trying to avoid. We're trying to stay down the balancing act end. And then finally, and this is something luckily that I don't see a lot, but this idea of enmeshment, where burnout, because often crisis point is the point where people get help. Crisis point is the point where the body has said enough. And there is some kind of physical or kind of a mental symptom that means that people go and ask for help at that point. But for those that don't, burnout can become that's just how I live. I just function by, basically crawling through my working day. And that's what we definitely don't want. So I just want you to reflect for yourself about the signs and symptoms that tell you that your balancing act is tipping towards burnout. And if you're happy, for anybody, if you want to share that talking to me, or if you want to pop it into the chat, but just, what is it? Is it something to do with your sleep? Is it that you stop doing exercise? Is it that suddenly, my thing I know is grabbing a massive bag of crisps on the way home and sitting in front of some inane like relationship drama, like Love is Blind, or what's that Australian one? Married at First Sight. So I know that if I get into that place, and then you've got Netflix saying, "Are you sure you're still watching?" That's when I'm definitely kind of in that place where I'm not in a brilliant place, and I need to keep an eye on myself. So what kind of things do you notice? Okay, Jim, my book choices start to skew towards fiction versus balance of books. Yeah, practice balance with fiction. Absolutely. Yeah, I notice the same. So it's this thing where cognitively we're exhausted. And so our mind is like, we can't do any more thinking. I just need to have something which is easy, easy on the brain. Delaying sleep at night so that I don't have to wake up and face the day tomorrow. Yes.
There is the question that
Mhm.
Greg's popped in. I don't know if you want to pick it up now or later. It's about, because maybe it was related to you laying out the sort of different phases, but it's
Mm.
about, can burnout ever be very long term or even permanent and unfixable? I don't know if that's something you want to talk about later or now.
Yeah, well, I guess it fits with the five-stage model. So I guess what I've seen is people jumping in and out. So people taking some time off and resting, but then coming back to the same context and not having got the adequate help to get any additional skills to navigate that context, and therefore being okay for another period of time and then burning out again and then taking some time off. And then so this kind of repetitive trying to use rest alone, and we'll talk a bit later about how rest alone isn't helpful. I, as a coach, I say unfixable. um I I absolutely believe that we can navigate our contexts in a way that can help us to stay away from burnout. I also think that I've seen roles where, and I'm sure you all have, where there is this really high turnover of people in roles. And I do think there are some roles that too much is asked of. That we'll talk later about this demand resource model. There are absolutely contexts where it is incredibly difficult to survive and to be healthy and be okay in that context for an extended period of time. So it's more about fixing the role, fixing the context, than it is about fixing the individual, if that makes sense. Because what the research says, take that individual out of that context and they can recover. So we know that the context is key. I hope that helps. Um, okay, Michael, 5 o'clock starts becoming more important and 8 o'clock in the morning becoming less interesting. Yes. Um, okay. And there's definitely this thing about sleep. And I guess, one thing that I feel is really important to say is that sleep is the first thing that I work with clients often who are at high risk of burnout. Because when we're thinking about those three areas, that overwhelming exhaustion, emotional exhaustion is a big part of that, where you just feel like you don't have anything left to give to others. And one of the most important places that we do our emotional processing is in our sleep. And so if we are not sleeping well, then our ability to process our emotions is impeded. So I think it's really interesting, this connection between Yeah, sleep and burnout. Okay. So just staying in this place of, burnout being about chronic stress. We, really classic model, normal curve around performance and stress levels. Like we said, this, and I really I apologize for the labeling on this. I used it with some young people trying to look hip and cool, but I imagine they were there like with the raised eyebrow, like my daughter does with me. So yeah, sick. Um, so we know that a little bit of stress, a little bit of pressure or eustress, it is good for us and actually helps us to focus our attention, helps us to reach our goals. But once we kind of get over that tipping point, that has a negative impact on our performance. And I think what's really interesting is that I would say if I'd quizzed most of you about this, you would say, yeah, absolutely, that is the case. And yet, we often do things that don't help us to process our stress. We work through our lunch breaks. We decide to stay longer at the end of the day because logically it makes sense that if I can just get that thing done, that's a much better use of my time than going and doing that activity that I was going to do after work because this is more important right now and this is the thing that's going to lower my stress. But we'll come back to actually what can help us to process our stress in a minute. But I think just that thing of the more stress that we have, there is this impact on our performance, and our minds often do things that do not help us to move back to the center of that curve. Um, and this is that piece around burnout will not be avoided by rest alone. Um, because I, we know that rest is good, but I work with clients who, we absolutely don't want to be people who, work incredibly hard, push ourselves, and then we get home and have to crash and spend all of our weekends, lying flat just so that we can recover. We have to go on holidays where we're just, doing nothing. So that isn't a life. A lot of the work that I do is around values and around the meaning that we get from life. And when we are just trying using our spare time just to avoid burnout, it doesn't feel like we're living the life that we're supposed to live. And I think also, like I say, this thing way of coping um, is often about avoidance. So that crashing on the sofa, so me with my giant bag of crisps, maybe a glass of wine, watching rubbish TV, it feels like I'm resting. The reality is, yes, I am doing a bit of resting, and some of that is fine. But I think what I'm really doing is I'm avoiding. Um, I'm I'm just trying to not feel for a bit. And actually, if when I'm feeling okay and I reflect on, what are the things that help me to recover from stress, they're normally things that are much more active. Um, so let's go on to why that might be the case. So let's let's think about our ancestors. So I put the bear on there for a reason. So when we're thinking about the stress response and what's going on with our brain, I love the ham-brain model from a psychologist called Daniel Siegel, and hopefully you can see my hand, might be up small in the corner. So if you imagine that's my brain this way round, and then I'm going to open up my brain, and then my wrist and my arm, we've got the spinal cord, and then we've got kind of, the oldest part of the brain, the bit that does the automatic function, the breathing, the things that we don't have to think about, right in the center of my palm. And over that, I'm going to pop the reptilian brain. So I'm going to pop, the amygdala, our threat response system, the hypothalamus, our memory, a long-term memory store. Um, what else have we got in there? Well, we've got um, our hormone receptors and kind of sending out centers. Um, and then on top of that, we've got the prefrontal cortex. So we've got the newer part of the brain wrapping over the top. And at my fingertips, you've got the prefrontal cortex there, right behind my eyebrows. So this bit that's like the executive function, the bit that does the kind of risk assessment, moral reasoning, right there on my fingertips. And what Daniel Siegel said happens is that when we experience a threat, so when we get this kind of high stress response, we flip our lid. And our amygdala understandably takes over. So our threat response center takes over because in those stress moments, so for our ancestors, if we saw a bear, we don't want to be thinking, taking a step back and going, oh, is that really a bear or is it not? We need to be ready to run or fight. I think with a bear, depending on the color, you either want to be freezing or disappearing. But we don't want to be doing a lot of the thinking. We want to be doing the reacting. And what you'll notice is the prefrontal cortex there is very close to the amygdala. So that connection between the two is really important day to day for our kind of emotional, decision making, and just kind of to integrate all of that kind of emotional data and the external data. But when we experience high stress, when we experience that fight or flight response, what we experience is this flipping of the lid. And obviously in the modern world, we're not experiencing, bears, but what we are experiencing are other stressors which, contribute in us flipping our lid. So what kind of things day to day give you that same kind of response? So for our ancestors, it was a life or death situation, but what do we get a similar type of response where we've got heart rate elevated, we've got, sweaty palms, we've got blood rushing through the body, going to those big organs, ready to run or fight? What are those modern day versions of flipping lid? What happens that makes us flip our lid in the workplace, in the outside world? Oh, assumptions, Michael. Time pressure. Yeah, boss sets up a meeting, you don't know why. Yeah, have you got 5 minutes? Yeah. Core communications and assumptions. Yeah. Cognitive overload. Yeah. Yeah, in the workplace, people who are passive aggressive. Yeah, especially on the email. Yeah, so it can be emails, it can be someone cutting you up in front of your car, it can be having to go and do a presentation like this, someone questioning you. Um, so many things in our day to day. It can feel like we're doing this, depending on your colleagues and the type of emails that you get and the type of work that you do. It can feel like you are doing this all day. And what can happen is we get a bit stuck. And so our amygdala is constantly on threat alert. And what that means is that if we think about the hormones that are pumping through our body when we go into a fight or flight response, we've got adrenaline, we've got cortisol, those stress response hormones that are going round. And the reality of the modern world is, whereas our ancestors would have been fighting or running and therefore using up those hormones, we tend to stay quite static. And so these hormones are in us. You get that kind of the jitteriness of that adrenaline come down. And then as well, we're using stimulants to help give us more energy. So we've got caffeine going through our system, and sugar, and they all feel quite similar in that buzziness. And and what's really, really, I think, interesting is that in those moments where we're feeling that really high level of stress and we're feeling that jitteriness, our mind is telling us, no, no, don't get up and take a break. Don't go and, go and do an activity. Sit here and just, you need to fix this. You need to sort this. You've got to get on top of it. You've got to get in control. Whereas actually, the things that will really help us are the things that help us to close the stress cycle, the things that help us to close this back down. So things like moving around. So even going for a walk, but going for a run, doing activity, apparently doing press ups is quite a good thing because you've got a lot of blood going into your upper body. But going out dancing, doing something creative, having a chat with a friend, um, doing something quite spiritual like yoga. So, again, the last thing that our ancestors would have done if they were faced with a bear is to start breathing deeply. We have this system. If we're able to take a breath and then a longer exhale, that helps us to tell the body there is no bear. When we're in a stress situation, our breathing is naturally really fast and quite high up. We have a physiological way of just, we don't even need to get involved with the mind, of just telling the body there is no threat. There is no threat. And yet again, it feels illogical in those moments to try and slow things down, to go and take some deep breaths, to take a walk around the block, to go and make a cup of tea, to have a chat to a friend, to write down how you're feeling. Because we feel like we've got to be doing, we feel like we've got to be controlling. And actually, those things that are really going to help us, we have to go against the logic. We have to find a way to remind ourselves that actually closing the stress cycle is going to be the way that we get back to thinking well. Because in those moments, we are going to react. We're going to be reacting, 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 and we're not going to be consciously responding. I once did that thing where I sent the email rant about a person to the person, and they were someone that I managed. And I have no, yeah, yeah, that's the face, Seth. I have never run so fast across an office. And still now, 25 years later, I still will put the email address in last when I write an email because I'm so paranoid about it. But what we find ourselves doing is having to undo a load of stuff mistakes that we made because we were just reacting. Um, and another one that I've put on here that I just want to raise is the animals. So there's this really interesting thing about our hormonal response that when our cortisol is high, so if we think cortisol is it's the hormone that wakes us up at 3 a.m. in the morning. It is this kind of yeah, there's some important kind of stressful stuff for you to be thinking about type hormone. And what it does is it has been shown to inhibit oxytocin being the cuddle hormone. So it's really interesting, isn't it, that when we're in that head down, just got to get through it, just got to, make it to the end of the day, make it to the end of the week, we are less likely to ask for help than normal. So actually, at times when we actually need help, we are head down. I'm just focused on me surviving, which again might make sense for our ancestors, but not so good in the modern world. But what's really helpful is that it works the other way. So oxytocin can help us to lower cortisol. So doing things like having a hug or being with animals, or even a cuddly toy. So it's quite interesting, isn't it, that children are really attracted to, like, cuddling my daughter absolutely loves jelly cats, which is bankrupt me. But that cuddle piece can help us with that reduction in our cortisol and help us to get those hormones those hormones out. Okay, so one of, I guess, the key messages that I share in the book and in my work is that, going back to this original thing that I was working on of resilience, it is not about toughness. It is not about, putting on the big girl boy pants and just pushing through and just, being as tough as you can be. It's so much more about how you are able to flexibly respond to the stuff that's thrown at you. And I think a key piece of that being able to respond flexibly and respond in a way that reflects the person that you are is about your ability to be able to, close that lid and to be able to take a step back and think, okay, what is it that I need to do now? What am I noticing? What feels really important in this? And so a lot of what I teach is about the skills that we can develop to develop this thing that we call psychological flexibility. So this ability to be quite agile in our response to what happens to us, rather than toughening up and just pushing through. There is a question, I think. When I wake up at 3 in the morning for the issue, I go and deal with it, usually an email, letter or something, or I just play my guitar for a while and then I go back to bed again. Yes. So there are lots of different strategies, aren't there, for the 3 a.m. Waking. Sometimes just going and writing it down. Sometimes, I'm just going to get it out. I've learnt to do meditation and to find ways to kind of switch my mind and take it somewhere else. But having a strategy, I think, is really important. Learning to pivot, yes, absolutely. And there's this thing called the choice point. So this recognition, and I like that idea of a pivot, is kind of, we need to have the ability to see that we've got options, to see that we've got a choice. And when we're in that stress place and when we are head down just trying to survive, we often don't see our choices. We don't see the options available to us. And so it's finding ways that we can create the space. Yes, Michael. And I guess seeing opportunities in difficulties. Again, it's so much easier to see those opportunities when you have the headspace to do it, when you have, full access to your prefrontal cortex, when you're in it, when you are really close to the challenges that you're facing, it is understandably really, really difficult. Yes. The Obstacle is the Way, still one of your favorite books. Yep. And I guess the work that I do is very much based on a kind of Eastern philosophy, but Stoicism and lots of these philosophical. These are things that, although we're talking about a very modern context that is moving incredibly quickly and is very uncertain, which our brains really don't like, these are big questions that humans have been grappling with for a long, long time. So, well, let's talk about this workplace that we are navigating as modern day humans. So, this piece of research says that we experience burnout when our job demands are high and our resources are low. So, our workload's high, we've got really, a lot of time pressure put on us. We might be working in an unsafe environment, so that might be physically unsafe or psychologically unsafe. If we're doing shift work, understandably, we've been talking about the impact of sleep, and in complex relationships with people that we work with our clients. And then the resource side, these things protect us in a way from burnout. So if we feel that we are rewarded, and that's not just financially, that's somebody saying thank you, someone seeing what we're doing and appreciating us, if we're receiving feedback, if we believe we've got some autonomy, we've got some control on the work that we're doing and when we do it, if we've got a sense of job security, we've got adequate support, We feel that our values are being met, particularly values like fairness and integrity and honesty, and if we feel like we're being listened to. Uh, so when I'm working with organizations, these are the things that we're looking at. Okay, what is going on within your context? What's happening on that demand side? What's happening on that resource side? And what might you be able to do collectively to reduce the job demands and increase the resource side? So that's a lot of the work that I'm doing when I'm working with organizations around their context. Because like I say, I obviously, the book and a lot of the coaching that I do is very one-to-one, very individual. But the, the burnout challenge is also organizational. And so this piece of research from Nick Petrie, who is an Australian psychologist, he looked at, talked to people about the things that have caused their burnout. And these are the types of things that they spoke about. And again, you can see how they align with the job demand control model. So unsupportive bullying boss, unrealistic workload, toxic culture, lack of resources, feeling undervalued, job insecurity, lack of autonomy or control, lack of psychological safety, uncaring work environment. So very much matching what we were seeing in that theoretical model. And then interestingly, these are the things that individuals said that they saw in themselves. So there was stuff about people's beliefs. So people who believed that they needed to prove themselves to their work, that they were very much, I need to do this by myself. I need to be able to cope with the stress that I'm facing. I can't show any weakness. I need to work, like my parents were. That's my role model. People who had their values misaligned with the organization or their role. So they were finding that it just didn't feel right in their bones, the work that they were doing. A lack of recovery, not being able to switch off or no hobbies. So again, the stuff we talked about earlier, much less able to process their stress. If their identity is fused with work, so people who very much, I am a doctor, I am a solicitor, this is very much, my identity, and it takes up a lot of my time. Having a lack of boundaries, so, work creeping into other areas of their life, evenings and weekends. Having high anxiety, so thinking about work a lot. Why do people do that? They send that really annoying email at 4:30, 5 o'clock on a Friday when you're just about to kind of clock off, and then you're thinking about it all over the weekend. Feelings of deep responsibility, so feeling really like you're going to let people down if you're not, constantly working and taking the load from others. Giving 100% all the time, feeling like you need to, which obviously links to perfectionism as well. And obviously, again, this is why I think coaching can be really helpful, because it's not just about, okay, I'm in this situation and I don't have any autonomy, I don't have any ability to change any of this. Having an opportunity to think this through, what in this is me? Where are there some things that I could work on, that I can develop my skills, that I can improve my understanding of myself? And what is this about my environment? And what control do I have within that environment to change some of those elements? Because often I get people coming to me, and I call it the Welsh alpaca tribe. So the people that come to me are like, I've just had enough. I've had enough of this. I'm going to buy a farm in Wales, and I'm gonna farm alpacas because I can't take the rat race anymore. But because often our minds have got to that point where it's like, I just can't see how I can make this work anymore. I'm in a real black and white place. It is either stay and be destroyed, or go and, I was to say grow llamas. We're not growing llamas, but you know what I mean? This idea that I need to go and do something totally different. And so having that space to be able to think through what is within your control can be incredibly helpful. And this is what I say a lot. So when we look at the context of the modern world of work, Feeling burnt out is really, really understandable, but it's not inevitable. There are absolutely things that we can do for ourselves, and things that we can do within our organizations. Are there any questions before I move on? Just to one practical thing that we can do for ourselves.
Nothing in the chat, Hazel, so
Okay,
suggest you, yeah, you move on to the next bit.
I will move on.
Cool.
Okay. So again, this is from the research from Nick Petrie. If you want to burn out, have an old story that's driving you. Don't modulate your effort. Ignore any signals from your body telling you that you're, exhausted in particular. Armor up, so get tough. Do work that misaligns with your values. Assume your 40s is the same as your 20s and 30s. So don't kind of reevaluate what success looks like and what's important to you. And don't have any hobbies. And on the flip side, if you want to avoid burnout, spending some time reflecting on the best and worst ways to live. So thinking about actually what is the life that I want to live, and what am I able to control within my current life in order to move towards that. Um, Making peace with not getting everything done. So there's this wonderful paradox. I think about email speed. Like the quicker that you reply, the quicker that you get responses back. So you feel like you're being really effective by replying to loads of emails, and actually what happens is everything just speeds up. So there's something about, making peace with the fact that you're not going to get everything done. There is always going to be something that you could be doing. Have a ritual to switch from work to personal mode. Have clear boundaries between work and home. Have more than one identity. So this he talks a lot about this idea of a third world. So we've got work, we've got home, and it's people who are able to stay away from crisis point and burnout tend to be people who have hobbies where they really feel like themselves. I can just go and do that hobby, and I feel like I'm just me. So for me, I'm a painter, and I don't, when I'm in a high stress place, when my business is really busy, I don't paint. And that I know negatively impacts me. And it's really important that I make space for this whole bit of identity, of being an artist as well as being a psychologist. Have a phone strategy. So again, we're thinking about sleep. I'm amazed at how many people I speak to who sleep with their phone next to them. And at that 3 a.m. in the morning, what's the thing you do? Often people will reach for the phone and they'll start scrolling, and then suddenly it's an hour later. So having a strategy for phone use, both like looking at work stuff in the evenings and weekends, and also to support your sleep is a big one. And then keeping work in perspective, which is a really easy thing to say, isn't it? But again, I think why, getting support, developing skills, having space to think through some of these ideas, I think is so useful. Ooh, okay. Yes, Jim, they can be. And I guess that whole boundaries piece, again, I think that's why when we lived in a world when we did all physically go to work. So we all, those that are my age, kind of late 40s, and older, we remember, going to work. You had no device that you could take home, so you could only leave work at work. Like you might take a few thinky bits home, maybe, but work really was at work with things like fax machines and in trays, which are quite exciting. But nowadays, we have to set the boundaries. Our workplaces are not often setting the boundaries for us. They will take and take and take and take as much of you as they can get. They will not tell you enough. You will have to say, these are the rules that I am going to work by. And yeah, our psychological contract with our work has changed. And I think it doesn't particularly seem fair, but I think it's really important that we we take control of that and we work out our boundaries. And I think one of the things that I talk to leaders a lot is that I don't think that boundary setting should be on the individual shoulders. I think that managers and leaders should talk to their teams to say, let's collectively share the boundaries that we're going to try and hold, and how can we support each other to do that. Because I think this whole thing about it's all on the individual again to say no, to push back, again, is not okay. But that's a battle I'll just keep fighting. Yep, kids with their phones close to where they sleep. They need, yeah, you make a little phone bed in another room, or put it in the freezer. Phone charging yes. Yeah, so definitely charge your phone in another room. I have a lot of people who say, but my phone's my alarm clock. So it's like so I've bought a lovely the sunrise sunset alarm clock. So I have a nice sunrise. And then to get past, because the other argument people give me is, oh, but I need my phone in emergencies. What if someone needs to get me in an emergency? So I got a landline. Crazy. And so the my phone is on silent in another room. And then yeah, if someone needs me in an emergency, the people that are likely to do that know my landline, and my landline will wake me up. Yeah, Jim, they do. You have to ask for it specifically. Um, okay. Because of the time, I'm not going to go into this next activity, which is the well-being wheel. But if you go to my website, which I'll give you the link to at the end, you can download this activity. It's also in the book. But what it does is it's a way for you to identify 6 things in your life which support you to stay well. And it helps you to work through a process where you can identify one small step that you can take to support your well-being at a time. Because often what we try to do is we try to change everything at once. And so it's an activity that I've used again and again in the NHS that just focuses you on finding one thing that you could do that feels easy, particularly when you're feeling quite overwhelmed, but that will help you to make small positive changes forward. But I just wanted to end with a bit of a conversation about values. So one of the last chapters of the book is all about values, and values is something that I use in my work a lot. So here's some examples of different values that you can hold, and values are qualities of being. They're the things that feel important to us. They're ways of being that represent the person that we are at our best, the person that we really want to be remembered as. We can also identify them by thinking about the things that really bug us about other people. So if people being dishonest or disrespectful, or judgmental, you can work out what is the flip side. So what does that tell me about what's really important to me? So I work with clients around, okay, let's get 3 to 5 of these values. Let's use them as a framework to really understand the you beneath this, achievement, this, the doing version of you. There's a you that's under there that we can really start to understand. Because what tends to happen is that when we're in that high stress place, when we're just trying to get through, we close down a lot of the stuff that gives our life meaning, that makes life feel worthwhile. And so asking clients, which of your values need a bit more sunlight? Which of your values do you need to be putting a bit more focus on? So, often I'll work with clients who the 5th value they'll identify is fun. And noticing that all their attention goes on things like achievement and courage and I don't know, integrity. And then there's this little kind of like fun bit going, oh, let me out. I really need some space. For me, the one when I had my daughter, I didn't I hadn't explored my values at that point, and I didn't realize that one of my values is freedom. And I found being a new parent really, really hard because that value of freedom suddenly was taken away. And I had to find little ways, like just going for a drive by myself, to find ways to feel more like me. And this is the thing I think with burnout is often people talk to me of saying, I feel like all of the joy's been sucked out of me. Like I feel like I'm a shell of a person. And so often what I'm helping people to do is to rebuild that sense of who they are because they've lost touch with it often. And the other thing that values can be really helpful with is understanding, when we looked at those three elements of burnout, and one of them was about cynicism and detachment, that bit of protection, is that our values are the things that will hurt us if we don't if they're not being respected, if we're not able to have access to them. It is painful. So again, when I'm working with clients and they're going, oh, this thing that happened to work at work is really got to me and it's really upset me and I can't move past it because it feels really unfair. And when we look at their values and this value of fairness comes up, and suddenly just even that recognition that, oh, this is hurting because I'm a person that cares about fairness. And I will say to them, okay, I want you to imagine that your value is a coin. On one side is all the great stuff that comes with being a person that cares about fairness. And all the on the other side is all the stuff that comes, the negative, the uncomfortable stuff that comes with being a person that cares about fairness. Okay, so I can take that coin from you and you'll no longer feel any discomfort about the thing that happened at work, that unfair. Nothing that's unfair will ever bother you again. However, you will no longer be a person who cares about fairness and who looks for fairness, who tries to be fair. Are you happy for me to take that coin? And most people will say no. I will keep the coin. And again, this is this thing about choice and autonomy. I think when we realize actually the things that we struggle with are often the things that we care about the most. And there is some power in saying, okay, so that's bugging me because I'm a person that cares about fairness. Okay, right now I can put my energy into working out how I live, how I deal with the discomfort of being that person, because that's the person who I really want to be. And instead of ignoring it and avoiding any of the discomfort that comes up, I I would like to find a way to learn to live with that in a way that it doesn't just feel like I'm carrying this big, heavy, uncomfortable thing the whole time. So and again, so I'm going to put a QR code at the end, which will take you to a web page where you can just fill in your details and I can send you the slides. But I just wanted to give you some reflective questions around values for you to take away and to think about following the session. So just thinking about what is really most important to you, what do my values tell me about the life that I want to live, who I want to spend time with, what I need to let go of, the person I want to be. And then also some questions, I guess, based around the topics that we've talked about today, but just for you, following this session, find a bit of quiet time and think about these 8 questions, and maybe they will, depending on your answer, take you to maybe some small shifts that you might be able to make to help protect you from burnout. But that is it from me. So yeah, QR code. So if you would like the slides, then you can fill in your details and I will email them to you. And lots of resources on my webpage there. I have lots of, downloadable ebooks and different resources. You can link with me in LinkedIn. And yeah, if you'd like to buy the book. I know that Donald took it on holiday. I hope it's quite a fun read. And yeah, and again, I guess, what I will say about the book is that I could have written a kind of heavy theoretical book, and I wanted it to be for, the a normal person who wants to learn something that will help them, but wants to read something that is just easy because they're already carrying a load of heaviness. So I've purposely made the book as accessible and enjoyable. I've put, some of my terrible humor in it. But the idea is that it's not another, big heavy thing that you've got to try and get through and make loads and loads of changes in your life. It's meant to be something that is easy and accessible and enjoyable. So, oh, thank you so much for listening.
Great stuff. Thanks, Hazel. Really good. Very thought-provoking. That's, I'm sure, for everyone to take away and reflect on, and hopefully we'll follow up on some of your available resources and perhaps pick up a copy of your book and take it on holiday with them as well. Uh, any questions, folks? We do have 15 minutes, so we could definitely pick up a few questions. I don't see anything in the chat, but if you want to come off mute and chat with Hazel, then you're more than welcome to do so. I'm sure there's other things people might want to pick up on or ask our wonderful speaker to do more of a deep dive on. So, what's on your minds? Oh, you've stunned everyone in silence.
Well, I
That's
think they're
unusual.
probably all thinking they need to go for an early night now. I've scared them.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we could definitely wrap up a bit earlier, but certainly not my bedtime. If I went to bed now, I would just lie there, wide awake. Here
I
we
have
go.
been known, honestly, I have been known to go to bed at 8. So there is a thing,
Wow.
just, with stuff going on in your life, one of the things that can help to support you if you know you're going into a really busy period is
Hmm.
protect your sleep like your life. And, and just aim to go to bed at least half an hour earlier. When you can't control anything else, just trying to control your sleep. Um,
There was
so
just a comment about the well-being wheel and the
mm.
egg question. Super insightful. Thank you. Fab. Okay, great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so the on the website you can download the instructions for it. So I really encourage use it with other people, use it with teams. It's a resource there for people to use. Um,
Yeah. I think Jim, did you looked at your just come off
Yeah.
mute? They're brilliant. Okay, go for it.
So one question that comes to mind is thinking about like being an employee versus being like a contractor. Like when you went from having the tasks and stuff given to you versus now you got your own company, it would seem like there's a different set of stressors that would be challenging. So I wonder what differences would you express with that?
yeah, because suddenly my boss is me. And yeah, I can't escape myself. So yeah, I think to begin with, I thought, oh, this is brilliant. This is so much better. I have so much more freedom. And I think, anybody that has the experience, the reality of running your own business, there are so many elements that you need to keep on top of. And that boundary piece, I think it was Michael raised it earlier, was even harder because obviously my work is here and I think as well a lot of people go into self-employment, that identity thing of, I mean, I call my business my name, and so the separation between me and my business is, that there isn't any. And I think when you're working for something, you say, this is about my purpose. This isn't about a job. This is about something that I'm really passionate about. Therefore, if I'm working crazy hours, if I'm working all weekends, if I don't take any holiday, that's my choice, and I'm doing something really worthwhile. And there's nobody watching me apart from my partner and my daughter to kind of to put any boundary around that. And so I think I've had to learn, and I'm still struggling with it if I'm honest, but to be much, much, much more boundaried. I have to put rules in, um, because it is about saving me from myself. And I think as well, people who work for themselves tend to be, you have to be very driven. You tend to be, someone who gets quite a buzz from that achievement. So again, I think that type of personality is something to look out for. So yeah, it's different challenges. And it's much more about understanding yourself and protecting you from you.
Nice, nicely put. I can relate to that. There's a couple in here about sleep. I don't know how much you'll want to go into this, but there was one here. Attenda. Hopefully, I didn't butcher the name there.
So
more shed more light on how we process emotions during sleep.
So I am not a sleep expert. I do find it really fascinating. I'm reading a great book at the moment all about why we dream. So I mean, the whole why we sleep book is really interesting. And I think, if you're interested in the topic, why you dream as well. So again, that dream state in particular, the mind going through different scenarios. And I think what's really fascinating about dreams is that there seems to be they're quite stable across generations, the topics of dreams. We tend to repeat the same types of dreams, but often, what kind of the dream scientists think is going on is that we are putting ourselves through scenarios, processing, working through emotional states in a safe space. So there is definitely a connection between the type of dreams that we're having and the things that we're trying to resolve emotionally. So I'm not an expert in the area, but yeah, definitely the Why We Sleep book and the Why We Dream book are both really interesting. Around the amount of sleep, it is so individual, and I think is that thing about knowing for yourself. So I notice in myself, in the summer, I'm really okay with 7 hours. In the winter, it's more like 9. I know, which people say is crazy, but I will go to bed at 9 o'clock. And again, depending on the type of pressure. So if I'm in a really stressful period, I will need more sleep. I think, that recovery piece, than at a time when I'm not, under as much pressure. So again, I think it's knowing and recognizing it in yourself, because everybody is different. And I think recognizing that we change as well. So I've been going through perimenopause, and again, I think, we go through different periods where our bodies need different lengths of sleep. And I think, just playing with it and recognizing what's working and what's not. Because again, we know, having too much sleep, again, when you're thinking about signs of depression, we're not wanting, we're not talking about 15 hours. We're talking about, like Vicky, 8 to 10 hours. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Two good book recommendations. I don't know the dream one, but I certainly know the sleep one. I guess there's a famous TED talk as well. So if anybody doesn't have the book or doesn't have time to read the book, because the book's quite a full-on read. The TED talk will give you the exact summary.
Yeah.
So check out the TED talk. It's definitely worth a listen. Any other questions for Hazel? I'd certainly encourage you to take advantage of the fact that we still have 5 minutes or so, maybe with her. Otherwise, I'm happy to start wrapping up. A couple of announcements to share with you all, but yeah. Any other questions? Don't be shy.
I do have, I'm not quite sure how to frame the question. Sorry, I'm on my phone, so I'm not going to put my camera on.
Sorry, no.
But so the nature of the work that I do is kind of the business transformation side, where you're kind of introducing that uncertainty and that safety and all of those things that people need to feel safe at work and to avoid burnout, but you need them to work harder than ever to deliver your transformation. And I'm just so conscious of that, listening to what you're saying of how can we provide that? Because we can't provide that certainty and that safety and security at work. Yeah. Have you got
Yeah.
any thoughts or
Yeah.
advice to help?
So I think well, I think one, it's great that you're recognizing that, because I think often we go into change programs and we're just like, come on, get with it. We need to get this thing going, and we want people to emotionally move through it as quickly as we might have. And I think so one, there's something about normalizing to people, like it's okay if this is, throwing you off a bit, if this is, the uncertainty is making you feel a bit unstable, that's really normal to react in a way where you're concerned about what the impact of the change might be, particularly when it's related to values. So I think talking to people about, what feels important to you about this, and what it, is there anything that feels important that feels at risk? So there's something about people feeling heard about the stuff that they care about that can be really helpful. And I think the second, oh no, there's three bits now. The second bit is making space for people to be able to share their stuff. So I often say to leaders, so if you've got a transformation coming up in a few months' time, please clear your diary as much as possible. One, for people to be able to have time with you, to be able to talk through this stuff and to just do that some of that processing for themselves. And secondly, for you and for them to be able to do those activities that help you to process stress. So at those times, the most important thing to protect is those activities that people know that really help them, whether that is going out for a run after work just to, get it all out, keep that creative activity, make sure, it can feel like we just want to escape from it. And I don't know, we get into a place where we either spend a lot of time ruminating about it and worrying about what could happen, and recognizing, that's okay, that's really human, and focusing your attention on the activities that help you to process the really understandable stress that you are under at a period of change, is really, really important, as well as getting, sleep and stuff.
Thank you. No, that's really helpful, kind of thinking through those sorts of things. So it's rather than focus on I can't provide that security, but like look after yourself and just making sure that they're doing the things to help themselves almost through it. So yeah. Thank you.
And I think that bit about values is so important to say. I know that some of you are going to feel a bit wobbly because some of the stuff that you care about, feels like it's at risk. So please talk to us. You're having a reaction because you care about the work that you do. And that's what we want. We want people that care. If everybody just went, oh, this change is happening, like don't really care, not really bothered, they're not people that care about their work. So actually that reaction of, wow, it's okay.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Hey, thanks, Vicky. That's a good question. Yeah, change is hard. It's hard, right? And you got to take people on the journey, and yeah, I think we're still learning how to navigate that effectively across these programs, because there are always different levers, right? Different things that are different tensions, and sometimes it's healthy, and sometimes sadly it's not. Right, I think we're coming up to the end here, so I think I'm going to start wrapping up. I don't see any other hands up or any other questions in the chat. There's a late potential. Okay, thanks. Brilliant. Okay, thanks, Greg. Right, so the Hazel, first off, thank you. That was a great session. I appreciate you taking the time to join us for this session, and straight off the back of your holiday, which can sometimes be difficult. So yeah, tremendous job, and I think everybody got a lot out of it. So we'll get the recording out for others in our community who couldn't make it along this evening. Do feel free to take Hazel up on the offer of a copy of the slides if you want them. Just grab the QR code as she suggested earlier, and do check out some of our other resources on her website. And please also, pick up a copy of her book. It's on my list as well. Once I get the current reading backlog down a little bit, I'm sure we've all got that challenge. Couple of other quick things for you just before we go. So as of now, we don't have anything else in the pipeline, not in the pipeline, available that's live at the moment. Donald and I are working on a few things. We've got a few exciting things that we're exploring with a few other speakers. So look out for those. Those should be going live hopefully in the next few weeks as we head towards the end of the year. What I thought. So yeah, October, November, December. So we do have a few things that we're working up for you. There'll be great, exciting sessions like many others we've had this year. A couple of good conferences, events coming up that might be worth getting on your radar. So the first one is in a couple of weeks. So this is one I am involved in helping out in this year with other friends of mine across the communities. That's the Agilist for the Planet. So that's a great upcoming event. It's free, it's virtual, it's online, it's over 2 days. It's a great program. If you're keen to get more interested and involved in how we can bring together the worlds of agility and sustainability, it's a perfect event for you. It's some, fantastic speakers, a great lineup, some very, very interesting sessions covering the tech side of sustainability in general, looking at social impact, a whole variety of topics, really. Some very human-centered stuff in there as well. So well worth checking out. I'll share the page for registration as well, though it is available on the website. So take a look at that if that's of interest to you. For those of you who follow me on LinkedIn, I talked about it in a post earlier this week as well, so you can check that out for a little bit more info from my view of it. And of course, it's September, so at the end of the month, we'll have Lean Agile Scotland. And it's probably 12th year, I think. And again, very, very well-known conference, brings lots of great speakers from around the global Agile community. I've dropped the link in there. Another program. This one's not free. We do have a discount as community supporters, Future Work Scotland. I think Donald will drop that in the chat for you. So if that's of interest to you, you're either in Edinburgh or somewhere in the Central Belt, or you feel you could be in Edinburgh in a couple of weeks' time and fancied it, you're more than welcome to take a look at that. So it's an excellent conference, another great program covering all sorts of great topics, looking at uncertainty, complexity, lots of stuff talking about flow at the moment, and of course there's a couple of sessions in there about AI, funnily enough. So yeah, it's all there. So take a look if that's of interest to you. If there's any other shout outs anybody wants to share with the group, you're welcome to do so in the remaining minutes. If you've got anything you might want to bring to everyone's attention. If not, then I'm happy to bring it to a close there. No? Nothing? No? All good. Well, with that, thank you everyone. Fantastic to have you here. Great to be back. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did, and we hope to see you again soon. Take care and enjoy the rest of your week, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you happen to be. Thanks again, folks. Take care.